After we left Miranda and Craig, uh, Michelle and I backtracked on our way home, going back through some of the places that we went through when we came. We didn't actually split off and into another direction going home until after we left Coober Pedy. On the way, we crossed over the Tropic of Capricorn, and we saw the famous dog fence that runs the whole length of Australia from south to north. And this is Lake Hart. It's a semi-dry lake, which is halfway between Coober Pedy and Woomera. It's very easy to access from the highway. There's a place you can pull over, and it's about a 500-meter walk down to the shore. You have to either climb over the railroad tracks or under the railroad tracks to get down to the shore. And here's a abandoned rusting wreck that you find in so many places in the outback, where people have just abandoned their cars because it's too hard to get them back to some place to get them fixed. Yeah, this one I knew he was
Oh,
gonna.
there he goes. Yep.
Our next stop along the way was Woomera. And these are different displays of things that they have tested at the Woomera missile testing site. The town itself is very eerie because at its peak during the Cold War, it had 7,000 residents. Now it's down to 145, and you see rows of modern homes that no one lives in, and dormitories that have been abandoned. And it just looks like everyone just got up and left. This is looking out over the Woomera testing range, which is huge. It's 120,000 square kilometers, which is about a seventh of South Australia. But it still is used for testing missiles and rockets. The next place we stayed was Uluru, which means meeting place of the magpies. One claim to fame is that it's got the largest red gum tree in South Australia. It also had a settler's cottage, but it wasn't open, so we just looked through the windows and looked at some of the relics that they had set out before we moved on. And we stayed the next night at Broken Hill Outback Resort, which was a beautiful caravan park, but it was right on the busy highway. It had trains and trucks going through all night long. We set up camp and headed on to Silverton to check that out. Michelle had been in Silverton, but I hadn't, so we went out there to see what it looked like. As you can see, there's not much in Silverton. It's got a permanent residence of 150 people, but it did have a jail museum that Mish and I went through, and had some interesting artifacts to it. That was the women's part of the jail. That was their toilets. Didn't have much privacy there. And that's the famous Silverton Hotel. And that's the big drawing card for the tourism going out to Silverton. We had to stop and have a beer there. And then there's the Mad Max Museum, which we didn't go into because it appeared that it hasn't really been taken good care of in recent years. It was kind of sad looking, unfortunately. It's the road leading out of Silverton, and the land is so flat that they claim that you can see the curvature of the earth. But I'll let you be the judge on that one. Then we went into the city of Broken Hill. Michelle and I had already seen the mine lookout and the memorial to the miners, um, though we didn't bother going there again. This is where Marilyn and I saw it back in 2019. But I had wanted to see the Pro Art Museum, so that was our next stop. And it wasn't disappointing either. He's an iconic Australian painter. First thing you see when you come in is this beautiful long mural that stretches along the wall. And you'll notice in all his paintings the bright colors and so forth. And although he had different types of art, a lot of his art was just typical Australian art. He was also a car collector, and he painted that Rolls Royce. He had 3 Rolls Royces, I believe, altogether. And this is the Palace Hotel. This is where some of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert was filmed. We weren't supposed to be taking pictures in it, but I did manage to get a couple shots of the murals inside the hotel. Next night, we stayed at Wilcannia, which has a bit of a bad reputation, but we found it to be a nice little town. And we stayed just outside of town in quite a nice caravan park that was right on the Darling River, which was beautiful. After that, we moved on, and on our way to Cobar, um, there's Mount Grenfell, which is just about 40 kilometers outside of Cobar and 30 kilometers off the highway, uh, where there's some beautiful Aboriginal art. The art was all put behind cages so that it couldn't be desecrated by wild animals or feral human beings, but it was really quite impressive. Here it shows one of the 3 Aboriginal sites, and you can see how they've caged it in. The scenery around the whole area where the rock art was located was so beautiful and peaceful and quiet. It just added to the whole experience seeing the rock art. There you had holes like this around, and we couldn't figure out what was making them, but I suspect it was maybe these little guys here that were doing it. So after the rock art, we headed into Cobar. That's where we're staying for the night, and we both Michelle and I had seen the open pit mine before, so we skipped that. We went to this museum that had a lot of interesting old photos and um, other things from the mining days. That was a medical train car, the first of its kind. And this was some odds and ends things out and back. And being an old country town, there was goats wandering in and out as well. This is the Western Hotel, which claims to have the longest balcony in all of Australia. So we had to go inside and sample a beer in this famous hotel. The next day we headed to through Nyngan, and of course we had to have a picture taken next to the Big Bogan. We stayed in Dubbo that night, and we had dinner in a pub where they were doing boot scooting and line dancing, and that was quite entertaining. But in and around Dubbo, we saw a lot of paintings on silos and so forth. That was really good. That one was in Donegal, and that was on a dunny, appropriately. And just as we thought our trip was going to be coming to an end with no more events, we came across a street festival in Denman. And so we stayed around and had lunch and took in the excitement for a while there before heading on home.
Still looking past me.
So that ended our 6 week road trip. And I think Michelle will agree with me that the entire 6 weeks was a lot of fun, especially the time that we spent with Miranda, Craig, Jacqueline, and Cam, and David and Lawrence in the Red Center. So now it's time to start planning our next trip.